Hello and welcome everyone back to the Dumbass class with me, the Dyslexic Gamer, and my players as always as we play some more Rogue Trader. Just a day ahead of when we usually play, and I think the next game is going to be on a Thursday. I think so. Yeah, 20. I think it's okay on Friday. Well, it's whenever Jim gets back, and if he's like Copus Montus enough to actually play. So yes, so next week will be in the air, the next episode, but hopefully it'll be on. But in the last episode, our group met the ecclesiarchy. There was some amusing introductions and first meets and greets. After that, the group, after meeting the now technically he was a preacher. However, his rank, where did I put it? There it is. But I will actually, yeah, he's not. So I went through and I actually did a bit more research onto the Imperial Creed. So he is an archdeacon. His insignia and everything would describe that of someone who is an archdeacon. However, his age would not describe someone who is an archdeacon. That would be a very quick promotion through the ranks. But upon meeting this much younger man who was very emotional upon the meeting of Heinrich and himself, fled into the Sky Tower to prepare things, and the group were invited into this settlement. Large town is a better description. And were taken to the tavern by one. No, I need to go further up. No, I need to go further down. Arthur. No, hang on. Sorry, I'm remembering a name which is already difficult for me to. Erasmus. Erasmus. Yeah, Erasmus. Arisnus. Yeah. Asus. Yeah. However you want. I a lot more of these names are written and they're just normal fucking names. So I love the sound of some of these names when you sit, but then reading them for a dyslexic person, it's like, well, what the how? Every time it will come out different. So the Shield sister, who was quite open with you all about how there is division within within this group. There are the old and the new. She was the one who has led you towards the tavern. So we're going to go for you entering the town and seeing what's around you. So, as your group, except from the Izmirians, she informs you that they will not be welcome. She can see the fact that they are more than a little inbred. But they stay with the vehicle and look after it. As you enter the town, there is quite a grand, now that you're up close, wooden palisade and wall. The drawbridge that goes down does actually function. As you enter, it is much larger than what the map would show, maybe about 3 times. It is a bustling medieval village, town, but there are areas of technology. So it's a well-lit street. There are lampposts. They are, again, very gothic and like Victorian in how they're built, but they are they are glow globes or lumen strips. Um, the buildings look as if they are ancient, as most of them are stone for the first 1 or 2 stories. As you get closer to the center of the town, it looks as if there have been add-ons later on to add a 3rd story or a 4th story out of wood. And you can see that the wood has well weathered and in some places needs to be repaired. But the town itself is in really good state of repair. The cobbled roads are well swept and kept of detritus, and you can see individuals who are cleaning the streets. There are herd beasts being taken through the town and placed in they're used for manual labor and placed in areas where it seems as if you can milk herd beasts, or at least this particular variety you can, as there is as you come towards the center, there are more merchant stalls, and again, this is a healthy, bustling population. As you're not rushing, and Arius, whatever, is pointing out some things to you. You might notice that the male to female population is off by maybe 2 to 1, maybe a little bit less. But there does seem to be at least 2 women for every man that you see, on average, in the places where you are. It has all the telltale signs of a medieval town. There's a blacksmith, there's a leather worker, there are all these different trades going on. But the glass in the windows is modern, modern imperial. It's ancient imperial made. It's old earth made. It's not droopy. The glass is not affected. It's almost a bit too picturesque fantasy town. But there's nothing out of the ordinary as you are led into the center, where you can see essentially the town is made up of concentric rings. And there's a road that leads from the center to the back. Not exactly a very good defensive layout, but now that you're in the middle, you can see the stone wall that goes around the first ring, and the sky tower shoots up in front of you. This is also where, at the very least, Heinrich and Cray do not need to roll anything for this. Cooney, you do need to roll your general Tau knowledge. There is a -30 to this. Maybe it should be more, because I don't know how many battle sisters are in Tau space or are in, you're definitely not going to be introduced to them on a world where you're all friends and you yeah, but so you would, there's no way you would have been, unless you were fighting them, there's no way you ever would have met them. And to fight them is also incredibly rare for Tau, but this is if you have any knowledge on them. So, that's where the knowledge roll comes in, just to see if you have, heard from a trader or an earth caste who traded with the humans, who then passed on the knowledge of these power armored women. Yeah, it'd be your Tau Empire. It's just a general knowledge role based on your basic. For Heinrich, it would be Imperial. For Cray, it's Mechanicus. For you, it'll be Tau. But yeah, just a -30 on that. So for Yukuni, you see on the defensive wall, very plain and obvious to see, are two humans in what you would at least have heard of, human-sized power armor. You might again not know exactly of Astartes and the height difference and size difference, but there'd be like two variants of power armor. So this is they are slightly bigger than human, so you would immediately be like, well, that must be the smaller variant of power armor. And the fact that their heads are revealed, and the Tau have good eyesight, you can see that they're human. They are. I thought the Black Sun filter, I believe. Their armor is so obviously for Cray and for Heinrich, there are two battle sisters, bolters, at ease, but they are there on show. For Cooney, this is very ornate armor. You would think that these are the highest rank, very specialized, very honored, or they're cut above the rest. For Cray and Heinrich, they're battle sisters. It's just their normal yeah. But bombed by the Astartes and fought them on the ground and saw their might and humongous sides. Bombed. I mean, giants in um the power the power armor, the walls itself are ornate as fuck. There are, like, again, griffins, gargoyles, different mythical beasts that are kind of protruding from the walls. Again, Heinrich and Cray, you would 100% guess and would be more than likely correct that these are weapon ports. That these things open up and weapons come out. This looks like a Lord Commander's or a rogue trader dynasty's seat of power. Only no, actually, a rogue trader's dynasty seat of power is actually more apt because of the filigree, the artistry that has been put into just the wall itself. The tower and its surrounding footprint is ginormous. Again, the map doesn't do it justice, but it is probably, like, although it looks like a cathedral from a distance, the sculptures that you could make out, again, at distance now are humongous. And each sculpture has other smaller sculptures on top of it. They all depict great monsters and heroes in knight's armor, or with a. So this is, if you were to go to an imperial world and see the statues of Astartes, but replace them with humans, you can't actually, as you look upon the tower, Heinrich, you cannot see someone that actually looks like they're in power armor, like Astartes plate power armor. It's all like human-sized power armor. There's no big power pack at the back. There's no like distinctive Astartes helm. But you could very well think that they are saints, or they are, and you, depending on the circles that you've walked in, you may have gone to an area that does have, you know, like Imperial Army statues, where it's showing the guard, or it's showing different warriors throughout the planet's history that have fought in the defense of this world, or, you know, very localized. It looks far more like that. But again, the artistry that's gone into it is magnificent. And it's very much out of keeping of the rest of the town. Like yeah. So looking at it, it seems very out of place. This humongous building with these incredible artistic sculptures of men and women and monsters, and there's no like hallowed saints that you can recognize. There's no angels. There's no, in either sense, like no cherubim angels or saints. You know, no winged humans. But, and yeah, no Astartes, no Sanguinius, no the lion. You know, no Astartes. Sorry, Primarchs. Arerus, Arsenis, Aresnus, it does, yeah. Aresnus hits with my mental chords. So Aresnus almost looks as if she's walked on, as most of you, Thomas in particular as well, would be staring up at this huge building. And she slowly turns round and just waits, and just gives you time to take it in. It used to be so if you ask, so Cray asks about maintenance. Well, if you have the knowledge, I'm sure our mechanics would be praying. Not praying. What did I want to use? Praying, not praying. Damn, the words just left the. Anyway, use a different word. They'd be desperate for someone with the knowledge. We don't get to see them much, as they are constantly in need. But when they do enter the tavern and meet up with their families, they are always saying how they need more. Although many of our men don't seem to ever come out when they get chosen to take up the task. So there are less volunteers. It used to be that, in my grandmother's era at least, that anyone could walk through the great Sky Tower, through the halls of champions. Since your people arrived, and the ecclesiarchy deemed it a holy place. They have restricted access. So, unfortunately, the stories that are told of its insides and the wonders that are there can only truly be passed down by word of mouth or what the mechanics tell us. And they're kept to the underground. Oh, yes. Oh, it has been here as long as this village. I want to keep saying village, but it's not. As long as this town has been here. It was built before our world fell, before we knew of the Imperium. It was the home of all of our people up until a few generations ago. The reason it is called the Sky Tower, at least as our legends say, is that if a hero comes and completes a great quest, their visage will be immortalized upon its walls. They will forever be within the sky, looking down and inspiring others to achieve such great heights. And the greatest of those heroes have their statues and holographic likeness held within. As she tells this, there's a sense of a warrior's pride, of achievement, of accomplishment of your ancestors' lineage. But then as she finishes off, there's a tinge of something stolen. There's definitely some resentment in the last of her words. Olaf. So, not Odlaf. Odlaf. Yeah. Although we may guard this place, Odlaf keeps to the sisters for his personal defense. They refused to leave until the threat was verified. He was excited to see what had come. No, they remained defending their holy place. There are not many of them that survived the battle. Oh, but of course. My mother told me, and my grandmother confirmed. They're great warriors. There is an aura about them of discipline, respect, a martial code. It spoke in volumes to our people, as that is the code we have lived by for far too many generations. Our people were once warriors and heroes. Our lineage of that is that of, she gestures to the sky tower, those that rose to the sky with their achievements. Though the tragedies have befallen us, and some more horrifying than others, our legends have kept these achievements in the light. Of course, every child here grows up dreaming of one day reaching up and putting their visage on the tower. Although many of these stories have been lost. Low Gothic was taught to me by the sororitas of the Famulus order. They dwell within. All children are educated here, but only some are chosen for greater deeds. Everyone must play their part. Everyone must work to a common good within the community. But some of us have better aptitudes for different positions. And the sisters are relentless in their training and scrutiny of whose potential could refill their order. The deacon is also obsessed with enforcing his order. Many of the battle preachers and those of the faith went with their fallen deacon. I forget his name. So yes, he is trying to replenish his own faithful members of the ecclesiarchy. The sisters wish to replenish theirs, and we are the cattle that will be chosen from. Again, there is a real air of resentment, as from your perspective, it does look as if the sisters are kind of, excuse me, are kind of looking down on the rest of the population from their vantage point. And you can see the fanatics who have gathered round the gate. And again, the gate, I completely missed, is also incredibly ornate with depictions of great monsters clashing against, clashing against the village. And it seems as if there's a shield that protects the village from the enemy. And yeah, the fanatics are praying to the god emperor outside the walls and the closed gates. She looks at you, and now that your attention is off the sky tower, she carries on walking towards a much larger building in a square. You can see that there are some traders around the outside of this square with a large building inside. And you can see a sign that swings out, and she motions for everyone to enter. As you enter, Heinrich, this would be a high fantasy drinking hold, a pub, a tavern, an inn. It goes by many names, but this is incredibly fancy for, like, when you walk in, you can tell it's old. It's incredibly old, but everything is in such fine condition. Everything, you can almost smell a sweet oil as you enter, and as you walk up towards the bar and place your hands upon this beautifully aged bar top, you can almost smell the oils getting stronger, and it's just in pristine condition. The woods are all original, well aged. As you look around, there's a large fireplace. There's another area in the middle which looks as if it's another type of fireplace, perhaps for the winter when it's colder, because currently it's out and covered, but you could see the bricks and the opening above, where you could see the chimney from outside. There are a large number of tables and chairs arrayed, but there are also how have I forgotten the name for this? Booths. There we go. There are also booths aligned all the way around the walls, but the fabric is just, you can see this kind of design in a upper hive gentleman's club. Like, it oozes this sense of like a warrior's retreat, a hunter's lodge, a place of just men talking about hunting, about great victories, tragic defeats, lost loves. This just oozes that sense of stories to be told, drinks to be drunk, and fine cigars to be smoked. For Cray, this is a very fancy drinking place, I suppose. For Cooney, I don't even know if the Tau have anything of equivalence. As far as I'm aware, they don't. The finery, well, the Tau don't drink, they don't smoke. As far as I'm aware, their entertainment isn't even written about, or at least the Eldar, they say that they're great poets and minstrels. There's none of that in Tau lore, so it's like a restaurant, a place to eat, a place, but it doesn't. Nowhere in their lore does it talk about, you know, these kind of establishments or operas or anything like that. So for you, I have to assume this is something that you have not seen before. Like, it, so everything in the lore that I've read about the Tau, they do not have opulent places to. It's all very militaristically, not bare, because you do have artwork of Taus doing victories, doing well, yeah, but as so from all the lore that I've seen, the Kroot and Tau normally have separate areas. So like Tau wouldn't go and drink in a Kroot bar because they're probably eating living creatures and doing weird shit. Because drinking is prohibited. Drinking is prohibited. It's a black market thing in the human enclaves. So that like it says that in the law. So yeah, no, I'm perfectly fine with the Tau having like a more austere, you know, warriors' hall where you can go and have some food and talk to the other Tau and but the idea of an old fashioned pub, you know, royal hunting lodge, all the words that I described this place as, I see nowhere in the law that states that the Tau have anything like that. So this would be completely alien to Cooney in its finery, in its like Heinrich would immediately know that that winged back chair, that by the fireplace with the stool there and that deserves a dignified, noble ass to sit upon it with a fine glass of Amasek, a smoke in one hand, fine cured meats on the table next to it. Like he can envision all these things of um, opulence, you know, to go along with this area. That's what I mean by I don't see the Tau having an equivalent of that. They could have their, you know, their warriors hall where there are artworks of different warriors in different settings, you know. I don't have a problem with that side of it. It's just this kind of, yeah, that's what I mean by it's alien. You wouldn't really have that, Cooney. So, and it all seems too much as well. Um, and it all just seems too much. Um, I'll give an area where you know you might see some commonality is in the hunting trophies that are on the walls of different prey species that have been you know mounted and uh, what's the thing your missus does? Not with the bones, but with would you do it when it was with the skin? Damn it, I can't remember now. Taxidermy, yeah, taxidermy. The taxidermy of you know keeping the skin alive and keeping the plumage of wings and so on. Um, you might find some familiarity in these bits, but everything else is just strange, and you just find yourself like again taking it all in, but maybe just staying a little bit closer to Heinrich, who Heinrich would be in his element in this place. There is a barman behind the bar. He is extremely old. He's within his 70s, maybe early 80s. Um, he greets you all with a smile, but he does again have a very curious look on his face, as you are a curious group. Um, Eresnus kind of motions for him to just back away a bit as she comes round the group behind the bar, whispers something to him as he walks off into the back room, and she pulls out a one large bottle, two small bottles, and a few glasses, and goes over to a large table in the center of the room and gestures for you all to sit down. Heinrich, it's not the wing back. It's not the wing back. You're a little bit ah. But as you all sit down, she or as you go to sit down, she's already popping the cork of the big bottle and pouring at least two drinks and gestures to others if they want a drink or not. So Heinrich, the liquor that is being poured, poured, got that wrong, um, is a not a honey-colored amasec. is more a blood red drink. As it's passed over to you, and you know look at it and smell it, there is just a incredibly enticing berry aroma that just rises up. For anyone else who wants a drink, she will offer. If you don't want alcohol, she will pop one of the smaller bottles where there is a tiz, and she pours out a fizzy drink that she informs you is a Ployne spritzer, or a Ployne Sprite, or a Ployne fizzy water with Ployne juice, carbonated Ployne. Yeah, there you go. Um, Thomas will take the fizzy Ployne juice, whereas Muttermouth accepts the spirit. The barman comes out with a plate of dried, cured meats, salamis, cheeses, breads. Well, he probably has two platters and places one at the head and one in the foot of the table. Um, a request for water has been given. Marvin looks shocked that his hospitality of good drinks is not accepted, and he returns to the bar looking deflated. And water. I have fine drinks and liqueurs. He brings back the water, looking defeated as he leaves the building, and you hear the door lock. Yes. Sure. Slightly better, but so she takes a sip from her drink. So you are actually another rogue trader. He swills the drink around in the glass and has another drink. You must understand that the last time one of your kind came to our world, things changed. I am of the generation that has lost the most. My grandmother walked through the Sky Tower as if she owned it. My mother spent her younger years walking its halls, and yet I was never allowed to enter. My brothers are dead. My father is dead. Many of our finest warriors lay in our great graveyard. You'll have to excuse me if I question a little more than what would be normally allowed. But the Odlef is persistent in keeping tabs on us. He says it is to watch out for heresy. Though I do not truly know what that means. We were... Go ahead. Our people, the stories that have been passed down, which are recorded within the tower, but again, I have never been able to read them with my own eyes, tell us of our great lineage and the hardship that our people have faced in this town alone. The Great Shield did not repel our enemies immediately. Our heroes fought and died until the anti-materium shield was activated. In that time, our regular shield had to be lowered. We fought bravely and won, and our numbers diminished to the point where regulated breeding programs have had to be accepted. We have lived martial lives, finally ready to cast off some of those restrictions. And your people bring our number right back to where it started. She drinks the rest of her drink and pours another. That was an exaggeration. The point still stands. And now all of our best disappear to the tower with your ecclesiarchy. It is only ever the women that return. We can hear some of the men, this is true. We hear their choir. The preacher allows us to hear it, to uplift our spirits and prayers to God Emperor. We know there must be some of our people singing, but he cloisters them off, separates families. At least the women that join the sisterhood, the shield or battle, at the very least we see them again. And of course, those that take up the noble pursuits within the sisterhood, famulous, at least we know they are teaching our young. So you have to understand that at the moment, our community is at odds. My mother tells me, or told me before she passed, that the former deacon was a better man. Old beyond belief. In many respects, he was ancient, wise, learned. Odlef was but a teen when he took the role. And unfortunately, it would seem that with the Knays. The Knays are in charge of the sisterhood, the battle sisters. Is that Heinrich? Give me a +30 intelligence roll. Maybe you pick it up straight away. Maybe it's like, is are you saying that right? Hang on. Takes you a minute. Maybe. It's not wrong page. Okay, so immediately you're like, well, a mission like this would have a canoness who's in charge of the mission. Yes. It was a minor number in total that came down. It would have been a small, again, it's not a crusade, but it's a small order. They'd come out to this part of space. But a minor order would have sisters of the of who are the ones who heal people again? It's Hospitalis. Yes, there we go. So they would have Hospitalis with them. They may have a few of Famulus to document and take note of, new family lineages and so on and so forth. It wouldn't have just been Battle Sisters alone. It would have been a full group of the other ordos, dotted ordos, Famulus, orders, that were joined in. I was going to say cohorts, but that's Mechanicus. So quite a substantial group was sent down. But she was lost. She died in the great battle, and another sister of battle had to take up the role of leading the sisters, rebuilding, and protecting a holy site. So, Heinrich, you can kind of understand why they might be a bit fanatical in their pursuit to swell their ranks. But it is a bit concerning as she tells you that most of the men don't come back. Most of the men are disappearing. Heinrich, as you sit and hear what she has to say, you'd also note, now that you're sat down, above the fireplace is a large coat of arms stroke flag. It's more tattered and well worn, shall we say, than the one that you saw in the fishing town of Prim. That is the. She smiles As she has to turn round and sees it and smiles as she turns back. That is the standard of this world. Is our flag. All those descended from this world's population should know it, or at least have some connection to it. Although I'm not sure how many communities like ours there are still out there. How do you mean? The preacher has the deacon. He's spoken of that in his sermons out in front of the walls. On this world, the great enemy would be those in the south. Although she had a pained look, the ecclesiarchy would say it is wherever the deviants and heretics lie. And she is looking at Thomas and Muttermouth. But there's a pained look on her face. I know it as a different tale, or at least I know of the Fetits as a different tale, story. In the stories I was told, as there were no Fetits when I was a child, or even in my mother's time or grandmother's time, but there were statues of the Fetits. There were stories. My grandmother said that they are even recorded in the Great Tower. There used to be, although we have heard they are there no more, two great stained glass windows depicting the Fetits. Nearly said furries. Never. Um, they were always a lower class than the humans that they served. But there's even a tale of one bestial how do I here? She basically describes a minotaur, a huge creature with a long, because again there are no cows that you've seen, but she describes a bull face with horns, and that this beast was had a master, a hero who had slain many creatures in this area, and was attempting to put his visage upon the wall when he was mortally wounded. And she uses the language that the Fetid broke its orders, its programming, and its genes to bring its master home, sacrificing everything, including its very soul, to save its master. And that her grandmother had seen the holograms picturing the human who was a huge man, as it was, a warrior, a hunter, and this ginormous minotaur bull creature carrying his equipment and carrying his goods behind him. But that they had a bond of that seemed to go further than and she says again, the programming of the soul of the Fetids for themselves. But she says that the Fetids died out generations ago because they couldn't reproduce. They were designed to have long lives, but once their lives came to an end, there was no reproducing for their species. And it was only when she was maybe 9, a bit younger, a bit older, when the Fetids made contact with this town, and their people were introduced back with the Fetids, but only in very small numbers. And again, she will speak quite highly of what her mother had to say about the interaction between the Fetids and the humans before the Imperium got here. But they never had proper, like, their people had never gone to any of their outposts or any of their, they were willing to trade, but in a neutral area. And that so in her grandmother's era, certain technologies were starting to become, more complicated, more difficult to produce, maintain, and so on. And in her mother's era, things had also started to go downhill a little bit. Again, once the Imperium turns up, it kind of tanks on that on that end. But that the Fetids were willing to trade for important components at that time. But this is when her mother is still, a young woman, a teen kind of era. Dare you? As a smoker, I don't cough that much. So this group of Fetids, the descendants of Muttermouth, were all genetically altered so that they could reproduce. They were a very special variant that had been given their freedom before the world went to war with the men of iron. Within the dying days of this world's great age, the Fetids were given their freedom and given their right to exist without humanity's interference. But all the other Fetids that were on world technically were sterile, but just were programmed to live for an extremely long amount of time and to be very resilient and very handy for manual labor, slave labor. Some of them were technologically capable, but for Kray's knowledge, it would be very similar to a guardsman repairing a chimera and a tech priest repairing a chimera. It's like, yes, guardsman, you changed the tire. I'm going to work on the engine. It would be very similar to that relationship, only far more advanced for the time. Whereas, again, all of that has kind of diminished as it does. But for the descendants of this world, the stories have been passed down through word of mouth. So, at least for those that still class themselves as descendants, they will all have that, tales and myths and legends of so on and so forth. You have Fetids with you. They have some semblance of our old world. You walk with them you ride with them in your vehicle. The humans, the inbred ones, were on top, clinging on. You show respect to them. They are of this world. Since your kind has arrived, we have had nothing. Everything has been taken. Respect has not been given as a warrior cadre. However, you arrive with Fetids by your side, whilst the degenerates cling on to the outside for their lives. You have a servo spider that has bonded with you, a rarity in the extreme these days. Yet their visage is also upon the walls and the tower. I am hoping that if the legends of the former rogue trader's power are to be believed, that I should poison your mind as soon as possible to our plight. We are not mud farmers. We are not peasants. Our people could be so much more. if those that are in charge stop taking everything away. I have not seen Odlef so whimpering and pathetic, kissing the ring of a man he has not met before, and yet I did not see a ring upon your hand. But he was desperate, which tells me you are someone that I need to have on side, or my people will suffer all the more. I do not enjoy seeing our men folk prostrate themselves and flagellate their skin for the sins of their fathers, who now lie buried in our graveyard. And it seems as if the sisters are held to a martial code that is in tangent with the ecclesiarchy, so requesting their aid to put things back the way they were is pointless. Next to nothing. I know one of your kind, a title and lordship, a rank, arrived at our world, and he brought with him a great host of the ones in red. She points to Cray, although I have never seen one of your kind before now. He brought a great army with him. He brought the ecclesiarchy, the sisters, all to try and claim this world and more within this system. I know of the hunt and lust for what they called archaeotech. She again points at Cray and also, the rogue trader. It would seem, at the very least, of a position of high authority. And as the creature known as Odluf has taken the highest position of authority for himself, I took my chance and rolled the dice, as it were. We are not what he would call, Odleth would call heretics. We heard the stories of the Emperor in his preachings. We have heard the stories from his preachings, and my mother heard the far more elegant versions from the former deacon. She told me that in his words of the Emperor and his son's great deeds brought tears to her eyes, floods, hope. It is not that I am against the Emperor, the God Emperor. A warrior should believe in a warrior god. It is somehow pleasing, even when one thinks of it, and to have such a mighty visage to welcome us upon our glorious death seems poetic and right. It is why our people took so quickly to him. And given our myths and legends, it would only seem right that all those upon the tower would stand by the Emperor's side. And she does, as she's about she's one drink down, and her second drink she has taken slower. But she does swirl it round and smell the fragrance and close her eyes and takes a small sip as she's remembering the stories told from her mother to her, or her grandmother to her, of the former deacon's ministrations, shall we say. Well, yeah, it is ministrations. Her face kind of falls slightly. She understands, and she swills the half measure that she has left and takes another longer sip. And as there's a moment of silence, you can hear just faintly the sounds of a choir, like as they're reaching like the hallelujah part. Hallelujah, yeah, that part of the choir singing. You can just hear that dimly. And she puts on another smile, and well, at least I was able to poison your ear first. It was an opportunity I did not think I would get, but of course the archdemon. It's not gonna be. For some reason, I was like, hang on, that's also awfully very close to archdemon, isn't it? It's like, the archdeacon seems to be almost done with his preparations, I should imagine. It won't be long. If I were you, I would attempt to eat something now. As she says that, she takes a piece of sliced bread and some dried meat. I imagine there will be quite a long sermon. When it is for the public, which is every day, 3 times a day, he expects all to be there. In fact, he has, in many respects, enforced it with his more fanatical believers. So, yes, I have indeed seen it. He opens the gates and opens the main doors to the Sky Tower to allow the sound to resonate. Yeah. The power of Slaneshi rock melted it. That's also I'm now looking at it going, that's also kind of concerning because it's an archdemon, and then isn't it that's the second lowest? Yeah, the ecclesiarchal power structure is very yeah, and I do get it. It's completely copied from the church, but still, it's like archdemon, archdeacon. It depends on the literature, as far as I'm aware. I know some Christian beliefs are that they're the same thing, but I do believe in other religions or other Christian sex. I can never say that word without thinking about sex. It's sets, is it? But it is because I thought a human could be turned into a demon, but a devil was a fallen angel. I thought that's what it was in it might even be in Judaism, so the Jewish religion, Judaism. I thought it was something like in there. It was, or oh no, they have purgatory, don't they? They have purgatory. Yeah, that's why there's a whole entire group of people who actually study that book as their career. You know, monks, uh, the Jews. It's the Orthodox male Jews normally spend their life studying the it's Torah. That's the one. I was going to say Quran, but I was like, no, that's not the right one. Yeah, the Torah. That's the one. And then Muslims are Yeah, Torah. Um, and hang on a minute. Um, but yeah, it's just I was just thinking that's kind of odd. But do any of you want to ask her anything else, or quickly grab a bite to eat? Um, as you get the sense, you will be asked. You will be taken to the Sky Tower rather soon, or soonish. So the first question I didn't hear. The second question as to technologies, she informs you that the tower goes very deep underground and that they used to produce their own weaponry and equipment. Sorry, Albie, I still can't hear your question. The fort. Oh, the lifter equipment. Um, yeah, she doesn't know anything about that, but she does like say that her mother said that great tanks and other vehicles were brought up from the armory to lead their they were leading the charge against the enemies down south, the twisted ones. um so within the walls, and they came from within the walls. um so there clearly is technology down there. And then she would go back to like the much earlier stories that have been passed down, that yeah, her people came from the tower and from this surrounding town. So the tower had vast technologies, and the whole tower itself is like a, a space marine bastion. Essentially, it's got guns all over the walls and on the tower, and yeah, there's a lot of technology there. Um, but for the last two generations, at least, sorry, the last generation, it's been very restricted access, and the mechanics who come out, um, there's only a few of them uh, who actually can freely come and leave. She does know two of them because they're both descendants, and she grew up with the younger man, the younger mechanic, and the older mechanic is ancient. Like he's a wizened old man, but he knows an awful lot. But he still has family within the town, so he does leave. Again, there aren't many mechanics. They are in a small minority of specialized workers, and they're technically forbidden to teach anyone outside of the ecclesiarchal's choosing. So again, when the boys get taught in martial practices as well, but the boys are meant to go in and get sorted into their positions. If you're really intelligent and good with your hands, you become a mechanic. If you're a skilled artisan, perhaps you go into the town and act as a blacksmith, or act as a worker in some other area within the town. But all the technological stuff is within the tower itself. You don't see anyone walking around with las guns, for example. The only guns you've seen have been with the Sisters of Battle. You can at least see three on the map. There are two visible to you guys. No. I didn't. A poor delivery. Oh, okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Not good. Not yeah. Bolter beats those guns. So yeah, does that answer your two questions, Albie? Oh yeah, you would know you have to follow Heinrich. If you want to see the get into the Sky Tower, you can't need to be behind Heinrich. I'm in the entourage. I can. Your Mechanicus out, Cray, so you could literally just go over data in your head. Oh, sorry, it ended. Oh, okay. Sure. So she, she was a child or a newborn babe when the fight happened. So I think I said last time it was 29 years ago, roughly. So yeah, she's in her late 20s. But she's been told from her mother, so it's a second-hand story. So the ecclesiarchy got word from the rogue trader that the Twisted down south had met the Imperials and were sending a war host to claim what the Imperials had brought. But essentially, the Imperials who went down south kicked up a hornet's nest, and a huge army was coming up north. And it was a few of the rogue traders group. She doesn't know which faction it actually was, be it the rogue trader, ecclesiarchy, or Mechanicus. Someone made it back up here and put out the warning. And the ecclesiarchal deacon here spoke to the people and apparently gave such an incredible speech that they all felt it as this is their duty, this is their time to face this great monster and become heroes for themselves. So all those who were able to fight went. She would tell you that she is a shield sister. The men used to be called the Sword Brethren. And the idea was that they would fight in tangent in their specialized positions. But at the time, it was deemed necessary that the Shield Sisters, most of their number was to remain here. Two reasons. One, they are better in defense, and two, you need a lot of women to repopulate your population. So most of the men went, and some of the women, just kind of led to this disparity in men versus women. So both of her brothers and her father went, and none of them returned. Those that did return spoke of a huge war host that came from the south. Their vehicles, their people, they referred to as twisted, as uneven, as wrong. The ecclesiarchal members who returned said that there was a betrayal. That when the two forces met in the field of combat, that there was a that the Fetids basically betrayed them, and the Fetids began attacking them. The descendants who returned spoke of twisted Fetids, Fetids that were no longer elevated. They spoke more of beast-like creatures. And that those but the only ones who survived the engagement were the ones at the far back and the outsides. So once the fight began, there was a huge noise and then a light that built from down south, and then destruction. And a great scar was cut on the flat plains that day. All those in the center of the column were obliterated. All those either side of the column were thrown to the side, where the concussive wave, the blast, knocked them to the side, covered vehicles in debris. And all those on the very outer edge were seriously wounded. That the war host crippled itself in the launching of this weapon, or the attack that happened fucked all the armies up. And there was a frantic fighting retreat, and gathering up wounded and so on. In that same time, the people of the Sky Tower, like her mother, essentially, would have told her, or her grandmother, either one of them were alive at the time, would have spoken of this noise, the light, but they would have also seen a huge beam shoot up into the sky. And for detonations to be seen overhead. For you, Cray, see, the thing is, your Adeptus Mechanicus lore roll is so high, and this wouldn't be a difficult thing for, at least for you to know. So I'm just going to give it to you. That would the what she's describing would 100% seem like, I mean, again, you'd get additional bonuses to this, even though you got a 97. This would be a, yeah. But still, out of all the, I mean, fucking hell, you got like 96 in your score. You got 1.0 under. But again, there would be bonuses for you. This is 100% a planetary defense weapon that is fired up into the sky at the very least. You would also know, Cray, that if a ship with its shields down was hit by a planetary defense weapon, it is almost automatically game over for the ship. At the very least, when they're big planetary defense weapons. Okay, maybe smaller stuff won't destroy a ship in one go. But where she says it was a column of light that went up into the sky, not just beams of light, not just strobes, a full-on column. You imagine that this, and from what you've seen and heard, this planet has a lot of archaeotech devices, weapons, and so on. This is something big. Also, so that So the one that she saw, like the one that her mother described to her, this is an orbital laser. So it fired up into the sky, and then there are explosions up in the sky. What hit the army, they don't know. Yes, it was a beam of light. It could have been another orbital defense laser that some idiot placed on its side and fired. It could have been a macro cannon, a ship weapon like an Ordinatus class weapon that had been fired. You're not, the details on what hit the army aren't as good because it's all people from the outside who survived the attack, whereas the orbital defense laser is pretty much a given what's described, and again it's only a generation or two passing, so still fairly recent in terms of, you know, passing it down through word of voice. And to answer the other part of Cooney's question, in their ancient history, down south was where the capital once stood, where the ships would land from orbit, where the heroes would land in their ships and would venture across this world, hunting and proving their mettle and so on and so forth, enjoying the world entertainment, until, you know, once they had tested their mettle throughout the rest of the world, they would come to this location to pass the ultimate test. Were there any other questions to ask our shield sister? So they've had very little contact, as their legends basically told that the capital city was destroyed in the last days of their world's archaeotech period, that the capital city didn't have the same shields as, for example, this place. They had a different type. They couldn't augment their shields the same way that the shields here were augmented. So when the end came and the planetary shield came up, they were able to fight against, this is the Iron Men, ancient history. But the Iron Men were able to, they targeted the capital. So then when the Geller, so again, I know I've worked this part of the story out. I can't quite remember if I've told you. So out of character, the planetary shield that activated was a haywire shield, but it drew its power from the warp, which meant that the planet was bathed in warp energy. So when that happened, it also meant that demons appeared. So the capital city was getting nailed from orbit, and then all of a sudden demons start appearing as the bombardment from orbit stopped. They managed to hold off the Men of Iron, this place and the Fetids were able to augment their shields to turn into Gelith shields, or anti-immaterium shields. So they were protected from the warp energies and the demons. The Fetids were able to do theirs immediately. This place, technically, their people were bathed in warp energy for a short time. Well, relatively. Whilst they turned their shields off, did some quick work to them, and turned them on as Gelith shields. The capital city, from their understanding, didn't have that. So their stories going past that point, and once they got swallowed up by the warp storm and they had to activate their shields again, nothing was ever heard from the capital city on any radio waves or frequencies or anything. It was just, yeah, after they came out of the warp, lowered their shields and could explore again, the world had changed. The capital city, they heard no signals from, and it was just a legend that something bad happened down south, don't go there. But the main town, which had reason to have a shield, was this one. This was the only town other than the capital that had a shield. And that's because of the creatures that used to attack this place for the heroes to fight. So she doesn't know of any other towns, villages, or that would have survived from the Archaeotech period. And their trade has been very limited because, FYI, they kind of don't like mutants or inbreds. So any smaller groups they don't really know of. They have traded with other individuals in the past, but they've never been allowed to enter. So she would mention that every 6 months or so there are trade caravans, or there are a group that have gone round and say that they're traders. They have goods that they might need that they've, found in an Archaeotech facility or dug up from somewhere. But they've always been questionable as to where they came from. And, when someone turns up in a horse and cart pulled by a herd beast, it's a bit different to someone turning up in a car pulled by servitors. So they're normally more wary about, and again, you were very fortunate in that, one, you had the car before you came here, and two, you have Imperials with you, which immediately helped the Imperial faction, if you want to put it that way, the ecclesiastical faction. But she can verify the traders' stories, or story that the trader told you, that they've known of people who have traded with a settlement over here, but they're not particularly friendly, or, they don't send trade caravans out themselves. And Cooney, have you taken your helmet off in all this time? So you've had a glass of water sat in front of you for some time, and or a cup of water, and you haven't had any of the meats or the foods or anything that's on the table. Um, um, No, I mean, again, you could like pick up some food and go to the bathroom. The town must have bathrooms. So I'm going to give you that one that you both have that it's in commonality. So you could take some food, go to the bathroom, take your helmet off, and then eat something. But I imagine they don't have food slits because, again, yeah, you'd normally just take your helmet off, eat something, and then put your helmet back on. Well, I would just imagine that it's more common to take your helmet off to eat, and then right, they're fighting it. They're coming at the lines again. Right, helmet on, move to the front line. You fall back a bit to whilst a calm bit of the battle. Like Space Marines don't have an opening for their mouths armor. Like power enclosed power armor doesn't. So yeah, again you could take some food away to eat and come back. Again, so light power armor doesn't have a food slot. Well, no, because you've got a sealed, environmentally sealed helmet, so there's no lifting it up a little bit. I mean, again, I've got no problem with you taking some food, turning round so you're not facing anyone, taking most of your helmet off and eating. But yeah, you can't just crack it open a little bit and stuff some food up through the inside because it's a sealed environmental helmet. It's quite solid. Yeah, that's what I mean. You would have to take most of the helmet off to eat. I'm not stopping you. I'm just saying if you want to eat, you are just turning around, not facing anyone, and it's just you're either taking a bit of food and going some into another room, which is not going to stop you from doing, or you're being a bit weird and not showing your face. That's all I'm trying to. You're doing weird behaviors and not showing you're not showing your face rather than anyone else here takes their helmet off, eats normally. That's all I was trying to get across. Okay, yeah, she looks at your face in disgust and horror, like just like a full on mutant abomination. But she doesn't say anything. You've got to keep Heinrich sweet. um, she hasn't had an entire lifetime of indoctrination that the Xenos is evil and should be killed and this, but she does have a serious disdain and hatred from inbreeding because it goes against the warrior, staying strong, healthy, fit, and mutants. Well, you're kind of a twisted, but he said you're not a twisted, so she's like, it's not a battle sister who's going to try and kill you immediately, or a preacher who's going to want to burn you. It's just I mean, you can pass as a mutant because mutants come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. Um, so it's just for her, you're not because Heinrich said you're not from this world. She knows that you're not a twisted. You just look like a mutant because her people have no experience with Xenos. It's another important thing for these people at the very least. The first mention of Xenos really came from the ecclesiarchy and hating the mutant, the Xenos, the so on and so forth, traitor and heretic, great enemy. Um, So, and again, they're not fully under the thumb of the ecclesiarchy. At least, a couple more generations, and they might be. But there's still, there's still some fight left in them at the moment. So yeah, she does look at you in disgust and repulsiveness, but she's not like grabbing her sword and trying to kill you. She's not like throwing up or anything like that. Oh yeah, I wouldn't take the helmet off around the battle sisters. That might not go so well. But sure, there's a time when you are just able to eat some of the foods and to drink the drinks. Um, and if there are no more questions, there are about 10 minutes that go by of you just, thinking about the conversation, eating, looking around at the core of the place. Before there's a knock on the door, and you hear the latch, the lock be unlocked, and the older barman comes in and gives a nod to Eresnus. And as the door opens, you can hear the crescendo. The sound has got much louder from the tower, almost deceiving how much this, what you would think of as a primitive dwelling, was soundproofed to the outside. Whereas you could only just hear in the quiet moments when the door opens, it is quite loud. Eresnus kind of gives a sigh and finishes her drink, taking another piece of food for herself. It would seem as if he has prepared. I don't suppose you will be kept outside, so this may be the last that I see you for today. But should you need lodging for tonight, come back to this tavern and lodging will be made available for you. I will point out now, she gestures to the windows, where a number of them you'll see figures standing outside. When you leave, you will notice that there are shield sisters stood in a perimeter. Not dozens of them. There's maybe 4 or 5 of them who have been guarding this building. Time-wise, it's probably been about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, perhaps. Not entirely sure what time you arrived here, but it's been about 2 hours, 1.5 hours, somewhere around there. As you're led out of the bar, she stays with you, showing you the way, and you again guarding you. There's a lot of townspeople in the square. There's a lot of fanatics, but the normal townspeople do outnumber the fanatics. But when you take into account the devoted as well, they're probably about 50-50 in terms of the split of the town. The devoted do seem to be just some of the normal civilians, but they will hold like the Holy Aquila as the preacher is preparing his sermon. As you can hear the songs of the choir. the regular townspeople are intermingled throughout, but you can see they are more just there because they're forced to be there. They're not, the devoted are one step away from being fanatics, whereas the rest of the people are a few steps away from being properly devoted, and ready to fight and die for the ecclesiarchy. There's an awful lot of shield sisters, or temple sisters, shield sisters, and they do more or less congregate around the outsides of the crowd, but again, some of them are intermingled within. As you are kind of brought along the road towards the square, Odlaf is already on the battlements of the wall in his ecclesiarchal finest. There is a new battle sister by his side. She is in more ornate armor, but her position doesn't seem that much different from the other battle sisters that are defending the main gate. But she looks thoroughly displeased, whereas the other two just look stoic, scanning the crowd for anyone that may want to do harm to the ecclesiarchal leader as it stands. And as soon as you all come into sight of Odlaf, he immediately starts praising the Emperor, praising his divine judgment to deliver upon to them salvation. The Imperium is at hand. The rest of the ecclesiarchy and the Emperor's chosen domain, or protected domain, has arrived once more and will bring vengeance for the deaths of there it is. Will bring the vengeance for the death of Gunhel, the former archdeacon, and Margaret Leoness, canoness of the Sisters of Battle, honored dead of the Imperium. Their lives were snuffed out too soon, and the Emperor has brought bloody judgment upon those ne'er-do-wells, deviants, and twisted. At this, all the people are cheering because he's hit the right words, as he mentions, all the fallen who died in the battle before. Maybe a few names are listed off of like the former chieftain or so on and so forth. And he hits a chord with this speech, as even the normal townsfolk seem reared up for vengeance to be brought to the those in the south. As he gestures towards the honored guests, the ones who have brought, and everyone turns and sees you lot walking down the road. Again, you haven't reclaimed your fine robes, Heinrich. You haven't reclaimed your warrant of trade or anything that makes you, but the eyes upon you, at this point, you stand up straighter, you put on an air of authority as a captain of a rogue trader ship and as far as I can remember, a descendant of a dynasty. Because you are from a dynasty, aren't you? Yeah. So you know how to act in a position like this. You would have seen other family members, and perhaps you would have been in this position before, so your back kind of straightens a little bit more on instinct. Your walk has far more swagger to it. Even if you feel again slightly naked without your finery to present the image, the image of a fine rogue trader from an illustrious dynasty, you can still put on the walk and airs of that lineage. Again, I will point out if you wish, but I would imagine you'd. Exactly, yeah. And the people, again, seeing those who walk with you, the descendants, show more respect and are more, as the servo spider sees your actions and takes up a far more like war dog-esque pose, looking on the hunt. And they get a sense that you are a man of stature, and it's not just what the ecclesiarchal representatives say. You walk with that mannerism. Perhaps in air of a cane, you're using your spear. It quickly comes out, your javelin, or you've got that air about you that makes them take note. The devotees and the fanatics, the ecclesiarch has said, so therefore, awe and amazement is given. And a path is cleared for you and your group. As you get towards the main gate, your shield sister steps back as the two sisters of battle on the battlements acknowledge her, and their gaze falls upon you, Heinrich, quickly. They quickly fall upon Cray. They linger on Cooney and Thomas and Muttermouth. The sister who is stood next to the preacher, Eleanor Kelly, her look of disdain of having to be here with the preacher lessens as her eyes fall upon you. She glances at the rest of your entourage, but glares at you. As the gates are opened, there are now that you get closer to the gates, you can see that there are other preachers and members of the ecclesiarchy who are ushering your entourage in. Yeah, she's staring directly at you. And as you enter the Sky Tower's defensive walls, the gate closes behind you as there's 3 very old preachers, one with a censer bearer, another with the imperial, a huge tome of the imperial truth, and another with a large it's basically a battle standard is the only way I can really describe it. It's a battle standard with the Imperial Quilla, with the battle sorry, it would be the battle standard of the Sisters of no, that would be held by Sister of Battle. So they would have their own ecclesiarchal, essentially just a visage of the Emperor, put onto a battle standard, essentially. It would take a few moments for for Odlef and Eleanor to make their way down from the battlements. How are we doing for time? Like, it would probably be better then to end it now, because it yeah, it won't be half an hour of, well, I suppose, yeah, no, it won't be half an hour, it'll be longer than that, because the Sisters of Battle are going to want a private meeting with you away from the ecclesiarchal preacher. And there's a lot to describe. So as you have these these three old preachers in front of you, there's a huge courtyard, a massive open edifice. The gates themselves are big enough to have a super heavy tank go through them. I completely under-explained how big these gates are. They are ginormous. So just waiting. It's there's essentially this, if you think of it like, it's probably 150 meters to 200 meters, give or take, to the actual doors that lead into the Sky Tower. There is a massive area around which you could easily have vehicles lined up ready to exit. And you could have multiple supply training areas and supply areas, and yeah, it is huge. The surrounding area, and the Sky Tower itself is even larger. Again, as you're closer to the tower now, you can actually, and you can look back at the walls, which are, essentially turn around and they're right there. You can see what Aresna said about there are servo spider sculptures on the walls. In some areas, it seems as if you can see where one spider has fired, and an artist has put the plasma bolt on the wall as well, artistically, as if the spiders are climbing up the wall, firing in its defense. Arrayed along, so the pathway leading to the Sky Tower, arrayed along are platforms with sculptures of humans, but each human is different. Each one has a different set of weapons. One seems to be equipped with a strange bow-like device. Another seems to be, again, much like a Templar, sword and shield, whereas another, like heavy armor, sword and shield. Another wields a two-handed club, but is in light armor. Another in heavy armor, but he has a two-handed sword raised above his head. Each one is individual from all the others, and is of mastercrafted sculpture talents. It almost looks as if they are alive in how much detail is placed upon them. And there's a good, so I said it was like 200 meters, 150 meters. There's a good 100 or so statues that line the path leading towards the Sky Tower. Is there anything else I need to describe before next time? Not in this area. Yeah, not in this area. That's pretty much everything. Oh, sorry. And the huge stained glass windows from here now are probably twice the size of a Space Marine, in both height and width. They are gigantic things, which the ones that you can see, which would be the two modern windows, actually, would show something very imperial. The Emperor and so yeah, it'd be both sides would be the Emperor in different depictions of one the father and one the warrior. Which, you know, if it's the size of two Space Marines, we're talking like a two-story house. Double the size, yeah, it's a two-story house, I would imagine. A little bit with, you know, no roof, but yeah, about two-story high. Stained glass windows. And as you stand taking in the sight, that is where we will end this episode. As the preacher and the head of the Sisters of Battle make it to the ground. He 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 technically is a preacher. So the problem is something that you'll find out is, according to the old archdeacon took a liking to the younger Odloff and wanted to train him to become the next deacon. And not really. He took the position way too soon. But at the time, he did really well. So as a you know, essentially, I think he was 18, 15, somewhere in those. I don't know. I think he was 18, in that region, and he did well then. But when the problem is, you know, when you're in power and you have a lot of fanatics who hang upon your every word, your sense of I'm better than everyone else, I was meant for this role, starts to grow. You know, starts to I am divine. Starts being a real issue with most high up in the ecclesiarchy. So yeah, power corrupts, unfortunately, and you will definitely get a sense for that in the next episode. But yeah, the Sisters of Battle are in a shit position, basically. They're in a yeah. Again, you'll find that out next time. So thank you all so much for watching. I certainly hope you've enjoyed and are looking forward to the next episode, which may be next Friday, maybe next Thursday. We will see. It's a Yeah, I thought it was Jim was back on the 27th, so we were moving it to the 28th. So was that you can or you can't? No. So can you play on the 28th, which is the Friday, or is that a complete no-no? Yeah, so it's a possible it's a possible for Friday. If not, it'll be the week after. We will see what happens. So yeah, thank you all so much. Certainly hope you've enjoyed, and looking forward to the next episode. So take care, everyone, and as always, bye bye for now. Oh no, no. Can you guys talk for a moment? Ah, but that's not right. I set that to it didn't accept so okay. So none of your questions or what you asked or what you said this entire 2 hour and 2.5 hour stream,
Oh
none of your words
no!
have come through. I
You're
reset
telling me that it
everything.
happened again.
My words came through because like I reset everything, but it didn't.
God fucking damn
It didn't take to your like when I clicked
Happened
speaker
again, boys.
USB, it didn't because I had to do it with Discord as well. Oh, so yeah. Sorry everyone. Maybe if you had watched it live and sent a message saying we can't hear anyone except from you, I might have noticed. That teaches all of you, my viewers, to be here live so you can let me know these things. Shame on you all. Shame. Bye bye.
You're very professional over here.